Hi everyone. I made this video just because a good friend of mine, Glen Buzek, he needs support. Glen is one of the nicest guys that I know, but a short while ago he was diagnosed with lymphoma cancer and he's now undergoing treatment. This treatment is very expensive and a GoFundMe page has been set up for Glen and people have now started to make donations to Glen through that page. Problem for me is that I don't have as much money as I would like to donate, but instead I use some of my free time to make something that you'll see if you watch the rest of this video. I will put it up for sale and then donate the money I hopefully make from selling it to Glen. There is, by the way, also a link in the description of this video to the mentioned GoFundMe page and also a link to where this item that I'll make in this video will be sold. And like I said, all the money I hopefully make will be donated to Glen. Anyway, I've decided to make a Viking helmet as I wanted to try out my new shrinker stretcher tool anyway and had needed some kind of project to test it out on. And well, it's sort of a Viking helmet, kind of a medieval helmet or something. The reasons it's unclear is that it's not really verified if the Viking really had helmets. From my own very unscientific research through Google and the internet, I found that only one single helmet has been found from what's usually considered to be the Viking age. But the funny thing is that excavations of old burial sites not very far from where I live here in Sweden, they found extremely nice helmets, extreme craftsmanship. They've been found there, and these helmets are actually older than the Viking age. It's just before the Viking age started that some local kings, assumably, was buried with these helmets. Okay, let's see how we'll make this helmet then. As you just saw, I made 4 triangular shaped sheet metal pieces, and I shrink the edges of these pieces to make them approximately into the shape that I needed, and then I used my homemade English wheel to make them into the shape I wanted. And to connect these 4 pieces together, I made some sheet metal strips to connect them with. I am obviously planning to rivet the helmet back together, or the pieces together. And also these small strips, it's not shown in the video, but I also ran them through the English wheel to make a little crown on them so they fit better to the other 4 pieces. The black foam that I'm using to test the pieces on, if they fit together or not, is actually made straight from my head in size to have something to start from. And I just wrapped them around my head to figure out what size they had to be. And then I just hot glued them, cut them obviously, and hot glued the foam pieces together. Rather straightforward actually. Here you can see me drilling the holes that will later on be used to rivet the helmet together. But meanwhile I'm working on the helmet, I'm using these Klekos or Kleko clamps or whatever they are called. But anyway, they are really, really helpful and nice to have to use if working on something like this. And here you can see how I also made the lower part of the helmet and how everything is connected with the clamps. The lower part was also made by using my shrinker and shrinking the upper edge of the sheet metal, and then using the English wheel to planish and make that shape that it's in. Here I've also made the nose piece, or nose protection piece, and sort of the eyebrows that go on separately, and I just measured between my own eyes to figure out the size of that piece. As you can see here, I've started to polish the separate pieces one by one, and I'll explain later on here exactly how you can achieve this kind of surface and this kind of shiny finish. I've used my small electric oscillating sander with 120 grit paper to begin with, starting from how the pieces were after I've worked them through the English wheel. Next step is to use 240 paper in the same machine, and then make the final sanding step with 400 grit wet sandpaper. Here's my power drill, just clamped into the bench vise, and what you the black disc here is just a cloth or a fabric disc, and what I'm adding to it is some rough polishing compound, and then I start to polish to take out all the scratches that is left on the surface from the wet sanding with the 400 grit paper. To get the final finish of the piece, I'm changing to this finer disc and also a finer compound to get the real mirror shine. One important step here is to clean what you're working on from the compound from the previous step, because this compound, if left on the piece, can actually scratch it when you're running the finer disc to try to achieve the final finish. As you also might have noticed, I changed my gloves out when running the final step, because the other gloves that I used for the previous step, there's so much of this coarser compound on them that I actually will scratch the final surface. And here you can see all the pieces put back together, except for the nose piece, obviously, that I will attach later. And at this stage I was wondering for a while if this was just enough, but I had some additional ideas on what to do here. I had some copper sheet metal, very thin copper sheet metal, and I decided to make two things from the Norse mythology and also kind of a local thing. The ship design is actually a local, my interpretation of a local rock carving that is located just like a couple of miles away from where I'm sitting right now, here in Enköping, Sweden. And the rest of the footage here shows how I'm working on the copper pieces, how I'm using my micro air grinder to engrave them, and how I cut the Midgard snake out from the piece of copper that I had. This is the last video footage that I have from making the helmet, and in a couple of seconds you will see the final result. And I really thank you for watching this far into the video. Thank you. Bye.